we're in Pennsylvania now, and so far the trip has been um, an adventure every day. We never know what's going to happen. We're in Pennsylvania now, and I just wanted to show you like what Tehila does when we first arrive at a new place. Is she walks around and just tries to find a little treasure. And if you see where I am, I don't know if you can see it, but there's this like beautiful little creek just somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. And this became our synagogue. This is where we daven in the morning. We take our kids out here on Shabbat. And, I'm a big fan of Calvin and Hobbes. That's like the comic book where the little boy has a toy tiger, and the toy tiger, when no one's looking, becomes alive. And there's one Calvin and Hobbes where Calvin is digging in the ground, and Hobbes is like, "Well, what are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I found a weird looking rock and two worms." And Hobbes is like, "Already? Wow, there's treasure everywhere." And so Tehila is able to just find treasures everywhere. And so we're in the middle of Pennsylvania, and just like this beautiful creek that thousands of people are driving by. No one really is paying attention to. But if there was a creek like this in Israel, this would be historic. This would be King David something. This would be some sort of prophet had drunk from this creek. And like, there's just so many beautiful, natural, beautiful things in this country that if you don't dig in the ground and look for some worms, you might miss it. And I've been thinking a lot about what are we doing here? And I don't exactly know. That's the honest truth. I mean, I booked these tickets months ago. Thank God, because everything is so expensive now. Thank goodness we booked our rental car and the tickets way, way, way back when. We would never be able to afford this right now. And my only answer is that I had an inner intuition. I had a gut feeling that we were called to go out into the nations. Most of our fellowship members, although there are members from 50 countries, the vast majority of them are in North America. And I said, it feels like our work in the fellowship is of the most important work that we're doing in our lives. That somehow the work that we're doing in this fellowship is manifesting itself on the Arugot farm. It's like the Arugot farm is some sort of physical manifestation of a spiritual move that's happening. And I want to meet those people. I want to create stronger bonds. And as soon as we landed in Newark Airport, literally like within hours, members of the fellowship come out to meet us. And people that were just screens and people on Zoom became human beings that we now have a relationship with. And the more relationships that we're building, it feels like we're like weaving a tapestry into the walls of the tabernacle spiritually. But I don't exactly know how to explain other than, we can live by this guidance. We can live by an inner calling, an inner intuition, to really trust that, to live by that, I think is one of the fundamental claims of the Bible. Abraham didn't hear a voice in his ear. He heard a calling in his heart. And Joshua, the same. We're right now, although this has been sort of interrupted by this tour, but I've been focusing a lot of my studies around the book of Joshua, because that's what I'd like to be learning together with in the fellowship. And in the first chapter, one blessing repeats itself over and over again. Chazak ve'ematz, strength and courage. If you want to enter into your promised land, if you want to conquer your demons, if you want to conquer the land and inherit the promise, you're going to need two things. And he's blessed over and over with strength and with courage. And I'm just now kind of getting into the American vibration, the American energy, the American culture. And what can I tell you? But everything that mainstream America is promoting now is cowardice and weakness. It's the opposite. It's like the students here have safe spaces and they get warned of triggers. You might be triggered if you hear this idea, and it might scare you and it might offend you. And you need to, they're raising a generation of people that are weak and that are cowards. They can't even listen to ideas that might challenge them. Never mind, do something courageous that challenges them in their lives. Just hearing controversial ideas, they need to have trigger warnings and safe spaces where they can hide from being courageous, where they don't need to be strong and they don't need to be courageous. And You think about that, like what a counter movement to the blessings of the Bible. And it's 4th of July weekend here in America, and somehow we find ourselves in Philadelphia, which is like where America was founded. I can't help but feel like that's a spice cart. We didn't plan that. It just sort of unfolded. And in the middle of Philadelphia, Tehila saw that there is a beautiful museum called the Faith and Liberty Museum. And it's run by, I think, the Biblical Association of America. And it talks about the founding fathers of America and how the entire establishment, the entire move of America was based on faith, and that faith is what granted liberty. And just the interrelationship between the Bible and America and liberty and emunah. And it was free. So forget about it. If you give Tehila a free museum on the 4th of July, we're going to be there. So that's what we did. And my kids loved it. We loved it. It was so interesting. But the beginning move of America was a faith-based movement, literally based on faith, courage, and strength. Just like the document that Joshua gave over to the people of Israel. And the war within America now, which really is a war on civilization as we know it, because America is Israel's greatest achievement. That's the way I see it. America was founded by the gift of the Bible. The Bible is the gift Israel and Hashem brought to the world. And America is this manifestation of what happens if you give people faith, if you give people liberty, you give people freedom. Look at what happened. The greatest civilization to ever exist in the world was an experiment of people that lived by faith with strength and with courage. And as I'm on the move here, and pretty much every night or every other night, we're at a new location. We're going from one place to the next place. And it's in that move that we're kind of discovering something about ourselves, something about our family. It's hard to explain because I can't articulate it yet. But in the move, it's like if you want to see if something is strong, so you test it, you push it to its limits, you challenge it, and even you push it a little bit beyond its limits to really see how strong that thing is. And in the move, whether it be a physical move or even a spiritual move, a psychological move, in the movement beyond where we are, and the movement outside of where we're comforts, the move outside of our zone, it's all of a sudden you discover where you are. And imagine the move of the United States of America was like escaping Europe, which really is, we'll have to get this into a little bit deeper. Europe, Rome, is the galut of Edom. It's the final exile, and it's the strongest of all the exiles. Rome is what destroyed the temple. The European Union is what is continuously right now trying to destroy Israel, and it is the European secular left Edom movement that is sort of corrupting the biblical foundations of the United States. And they're trying to squinch that liberty because, without faith, really liberty is far off. All of a sudden, there's a Tower of Babel where everyone needs to speak the same language. And if you tweet something that's politically incorrect, the Tower of Babel will throw you into the furnace. And that's amazing to know that one of the symbols of the European Union is the Tower of Babel. And how did that even happen? This elite group that's removed from the people, that wants one language, one government, one rule. The Tower of Babel is that representation. And there's no question that the secular leftist movement in America is like a European branch that is the anti-biblical movement. And what is the best way to rule over people? Well, if you make weak cowards, that's a real good way to rule over people. You don't give people strength and courage because they might just stand up for themselves. Make people weak, make people fearful, make people just follow the rules, whatever the rules are. And sometimes the rules can't make any sense. And that's when you really know you have them. When truths become lies and lies become truths, and you have to follow the lies as if they're truths. That's actually one of the signs that we're entering into the end of days. And it's amazing because the end of June here in the United States was a month that they celebrate sort of alternative sexual realities. And the Bible's pretty clear on sort of just keep it natural, keep it in the family, just try to stay aligned with the natural course of things. And in America, they're celebrating the opposite. And, I just 10 years ago, I don't think anyone saw this coming, that you would be a bigot if you thought that a boy could be a girl or that a girl could be a boy, and all of the confusion that's there. But right now, that is the law of this land. If you are in mainstream of the United States of America, you better preach that lies are truths. And if you don't, well, they'll scare you into that. And so what a message coming from the land of Israel right now is not just faith and liberty, but strength and courage. And that within the move, we have to be able to be in motion. In motion now, some of us were in motion when we moved to the farm. You know, Tehila and I kind of gave it all up, sold our home, sold most of our possessions, and then we moved into the farm. And in that move, I discovered who Tehila was. We were married for 15 years. I had no idea who I was married to. I had no idea the strength and the courage of that woman. And in the move, I discovered that when we were pushed to our limits, pushed beyond our limits, and I cracked and she didn't, there's like a new level of admiration, a new level of love was born. Because only when we're in movement can we really discover who we are. Only in movement is strength and courage really tested. And so, but now that we're in the farm, it's like, okay, we're laying down roots here, at least for the time being. But now we have to be in constant movement and change to be alive. Everything that's alive is in change. Everything alive is growing. And for us to be aligned with that movement, we have to be moving and growing all the time. And so that move is why the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they're in constant movement all of the time. All of the Bible's in movement. Joshua is conquering the land. And the one time Israel is not in movement, that's actually when we're called slaves in Egypt. When we are locked in our ways, locked in our place, and we are not in movement, that's when we're called slaves. That's when we become weak. That's when others rule over us. And so right now, as we sort of approach these times, because times are changing. The United States of America today is not the United States before Corona. Because I saw the United States before Corona, and there was food on the shelves in Walmart. Right now, we went to Walmart and we couldn't find cutlery, plastic spoons and forks, like the shelves were empty. Walmart, to me, was always the expression of the endless abundance of the United States. And all of a sudden, you go to Walmart and the shelves are kind of empty. We're like, what's going on here? Now, for the people living in the United States, it's like a frog in boiling water. The waters are getting warmer and warmer, and the frogs don't notice, but eventually it reaches a boiling point and the frog will pass out. But because I've been removed from the United States for so long, when I came here and the prices are so expensive now, gas is almost as expensive as it is in Israel. And something is changing. And that change is happening to everyone. And the last prophecy, or one of the last prophecies in the book of Malachi, which is one of the last prophets of the Hebrew Bible, it says the sun is going to rise. And for the wicked, that sun is going to burn them. But for the righteous, that sun is going to heal them, to be warm for them. Now, change is going to happen in these days, big changes. But if we are used to change, and we're used to moving, and we're used to that flow, and when the sun changes, it's okay, because we're always looking for the change. And that sun will be healing for those that are ready to grow. But those that are locked in their own slavery, that don't want to move, that don't want to be challenged, well, then weakness and cowardice kind of reigns. And so right now there is a real culture war. There is the Bible on one hand, and there is literally just a movement that has no rationale to it. There's no theology to it. There's no logic to it, because a lot of their opinions contradict each other. There's just, it's just an anti-God, an anti-Bible movement. Like they are defined by whatever is the progress away from the Bible. Like whatever roots, values were rooted here, we're just going to take the other road, because why not? Because that's what we are. We're just the anti-movement. And so within that, there's going to need a lot of strength and a lot of courage, because it seems as though the righteous among the nations, they're just 10. There's going to be small pockets of the righteous among the nations where the mainstream goes along with Edom. And then those that love the Bible, that love Israel, are going to somehow be pulled out. And how marvelous it is to like meet them now in person on this trip. It seems as though it feels like we're doing something so beautiful, so historic, so aligned with prophecy, that we're literally gathering little sparks, gems and jewels from across the United States now. And I can't help but feel that, Jeremiah the prophet, who I'm named after, spent a lot of his time outside of the land of Israel, looking for the lost tribes of Israel, preaching to the nations, going out into the world, traveling just as he did. We are now, just instead of kind of calling for the destruction, think it's time to call for the redemption now. And so as things change, know that the sun is going to rise, and a lot of people may feel burned by it. But if we align ourselves with the destiny of Israel, that sun is going to be healing. And if we align ourselves, constantly moving, constantly challenging ourselves, looking for the growth, that when we're called to grow, that's already in our natural movement, and it'll be healing for us. And so I want to invite Tehila on as well. She's at a different location because we sort of had to divide and conquer here as we're watching for our children. So want to bless you from this beautiful creek in Pennsylvania. And our next stop is Western Pennsylvania. We haven't publicized where we're speaking online, but if you guys want to know where we're going to be at, just send us messages privately. And I'll let you know for sure, just kind of for security reasons in my own head, we haven't like pushed it out publicly yet. But if anyone wants to know where we are, we would love to see you. We would love to meet you. Eventually, we're going to make Shabbat in Iowa, and then our next Shabbat is going to be in Colorado. So if you guys want to find us there, we would love, love, love to see you. And so I hope Tehila made her way onto this Zoom call. And if she is, then here she is. Oh no, Ari, you have to unmute Tehila.
Tabitha, can you unmute Tehila? There you are, Tehila, you're on.
Hey everyone, so we are officially on our Gimpel family tour of the USA, and Jeremy forgot to mention that I wasn't looking for treasure in that creek. I was looking for a place to do a ritual immersion of the pots we bought so that we can make kosher food, and every place we go, I make him look for a creek so that he can climb down and risk his life to dunk our pots, and then I always tell him he didn't do it good enough and I send him back to do it again. So yes, for those of you asking on the chat what we're doing in the creek, that is what we are doing. So we've had the chance to meet some of you, and we can't wait to keep on meeting more. And we are in Philadelphia, and you know, in anticipation. Oh, sorry, whoopsie daisy. In anticipation of Eden's bat mitzvah, I am learning with her the tractate of Barachot from the Talmud Bavli, from the Babylonian Talmud. And we were studying on Shabbat afternoon and came across this really interesting passage. It says that Rabbi Yochanan, who was a Talmudic sage in the Amoraic period shortly following the Bar Kokhba rebellion and the exile, and he says something that Eden did not like. He says, one must not fill their mouth with laughter in this world, because it says in Psalm 126, then our mouths will be filled with laughter and our tongues with songs of praise, meaning only then in the future. And Eden said, what? I want to have laughter now. I don't like that. But I said, you need to imagine, we're talking about the generations following the destruction. Imagine someone being happy and joyful and filled with laughter. How can you be happy and in a state of joy when you see the Jewish people and all of their suffering? Let's say, you know, your business is doing well, your family is doing well. Can you be fully rejoicing, you know, and ignoring all of our suffering? So on this passage, Rabbi Avram Yitzchak Cohen Cook says, laughter in its fullness, in its unbridled, just, you know, joy, indicates that you've achieved your life goal in its entirety. And a person needs to understand that their life mission is not complete until the collective life mission of Israel and humanity, as laid out in the Bible, is complete, when the earth is filled with the knowledge of Hashem. So this goal, if it's in your mind, if it's deeply embedded in the heart of every person, you can't really be in complete joy for your personal, you know, whatever, until the collective goal has been achieved. Now, what's so interesting here is that Rabbi Yochanan in the Talmud isn't saying that laughter and joy are bad. Like, you know, there's some religions that say you have to be stern and serious, don't be too happy. He's saying that laughter and joy is the goal, but it's a future-oriented goal and not a present-oriented goal, meaning the joy is not just on whatever, you know, fleeting pleasure I have in this moment, but on thinking about a larger collective biblical vision that's going to bring us real joy. And now what's so interesting is that this isn't the only place where there's a distinction made between present laughter and future laughter. Does this ring a bell for any of you guys? Where does this distinction appear in the Bible between laughing now and laughing in the future? I think the first place we see it is in Genesis 21. Let's go back there. You know, Sarah has her son, Isaac, and Hagar has Ishmael. And in verse 9, Sarah sees, it says, Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, making merry. In Hebrew, it says mitzachek, meaning making laughter, having laughter and, just doing fun things, being a comedian. And she goes, that's it. She says to Abraham, drive out this handmaid and her son, for the son of this handmaid shall not inherit with my son Isaac. Well, that's a little ironic. Did you not name him Isaac, which is Yitzchak, which means he will laugh? Like, what is the better way to get someone to laugh than put them with a brother that makes people laugh? But she gets it. She says, Yishmael is mitzachek. He's making laughter in the present tense. My son is named Yitzchak, which means he will laugh in the future. I don't want this guy to inherit with my son, because the Torah is maybe setting up here this paradigmatic difference that Sarah is identifying between the biblical worldview and the non-biblical worldview. The non-biblical worldview is just eat, drink, be merry. There's no purpose in life. There's no goal. This is what you have fun while you can, try to squeeze out as much merriment and enjoyment. And Sarah is saying, no, he's not going to inherit with Yitzchak. The biblical worldview is the future tense, not to focus on maximizing your enjoyment right now, but to make sacrifices and to work hard now for a vision of the ultimate future joy. I don't want Yitzchak to be overwhelmed by this culture of just enjoying the moment. I want him to be around people that will facilitate him becoming Yitzchak, the person who will rejoice, who focuses on rejoicing when he achieves his future goal. And we can see this, Jeremy and I can see this as we're traveling throughout the exile. We see there's this cultural war going on between those who just say, enjoy yourselves now. Why bother having children? Why bother getting married? Those things are hard. Versus those who say, I'm going to sow now so that I can reap joyfully in the future. I will build and I will work and I will do things so that the future will be beautiful. And now what really astonished me is the continuation at the end of this Talmudic passage. The Talmud says, okay, Rabbi Yochanan, so you're not allowed to fill your mouth with laughter now, because the verse in Psalm 126 says that one day you will fill your mouth with laughter. But when does that finish? Like, when does that expire? When can we actually be joyful? I thought the answer would be maybe when Mashiach comes, or maybe when everyone keeps the Torah, or when the temple is rebuilt. There's tons of possibilities, but Talmud says no. The answer is right there in the verse. When our mouths will be filled with laughter and our tongues with songs of praise. What's the end of the verse? Then they will say among the nations, the Lord has done great things with them. The Talmud says that is when the rule will be suspended and we can be in true joy. The benchmark is when the nations say, the Lord has done great things with Israel. And I thought this is so beautiful, because we can see the beginning of this as we're traveling right before our eyes, and we're meeting people from all over the country saying to us, Hashem has done great things for you. How can we attach ourselves to Israel? How can we be part of this? And, sometimes people will say to us, well, aren't there enough Jews who need to learn Torah? Why are you, including the nations in the fellowship? And I think the answer is in this very Talmudic passage that says that the mark to know when Israel is fulfilling their goal is when the nations recognize it. And this gives us, Jews and Gentiles alike, something to work together for, to make us worthy to live in a world, to act in such a way so that the nations will say, Hashem has dealt greatly with you. And it gives a goal for the nations to understand that they have an important role in achieving this biblical vision by encouraging Israel and reminding us where we need to be focused and where we need to be oriented. And so may we all merit to rejoice together and fill our mouths with laughter in Jerusalem.